Hey everybody, this is Dr. William Clark, your host of the Dr. William Clark podcast. Glad to be with you all for another episode. This is the podcast where we talk about all things nonprofits. We focus on strategy, leadership, and fundraising. I want to talk today about moving with one voice as an organization. And this is a topic I think is really important because there are a lot of organizations, and I typically, particularly as of late, have been doing podcasts for organizations that are new or growing. But this one is going to be primarily for the mature organizations out there. And yes, for the newbies, you can learn lessons from this particular podcast too. So I want to encourage you to check in here with this particular podcast. But I want to address this issue of moving with one voice. Now, before we do that, I want to encourage you to take the time, visit me at DrWilliamPClark.com. Again, it's DrWilliamPClark.com. That's where we have all of our resources. We have a number of resources available to you specifically for you. There, you can schedule a consultation with me. You can schedule to join one of our upcoming courses and classes and workshops. You can also download books, watch past podcasts, the whole nine. It's all available to you and is up there for you. So I want to encourage you to go ahead and visit me at drwilliampclark.com, and I would love to catch you there. Now, let's talk about moving with one voice. This is important because, as I often say in our podcasts, you are designed as an organization to serve your customer. That's who matters the most. And if you're not in a position where you can do that consistently, or if you're not willing to do that consistently, then you're doing a huge disservice to the organization. And more importantly, you're doing a huge disservice to your customer. Our goal, our focus should be focused on how can we provide quality services for our customers on a consistent basis every time we open our doors, every time we run a program, every time we're doing something that helps the community, that benefits the community. And so if you're not moving and operating with this in mind, then you're operating really without the clear focus you need to be at your very best. Now, when we talk about operating with one voice, I'm also addressing how all of this ties into your ability to lead your organization, how this ties into your ability to operate your organization, how this ties into your ability to raise money for your organization. All of this comes full circle. So when we want to move, if we're going to move with one voice, this means that we're going to have the following three things, following three strategies in place. Number one, we're going to have a singular organizational strategy. A singular organizational strategy. What's the strategy? What's the approach that we're going to take to make sure that as an organization and as a unit, everyone from top to bottom is moving in the same direction? This can show up in your strategic plan, which is the preferred location or destination or place where this should exist. This can show up in subsequent action plans that are tied back to your strategic plan. This can show up in any other document that guides the entire organization. But regardless of where this shows up, we as an organization need to have a singular voice as an organization to accomplish a goal or a set of goals. What's that strategy? What's those strategies going to be? I have found in the services that I provide to my clients, I've found in way too many occasions that some of my clients struggle with this because there's an organizational strategy, but not everybody has bought into it. Not everybody has committed themselves to this strategy and has made this strategy their focal point in their work. I've seen way too many occasions organizations spend a lot of good money on strategic plans, but unfortunately, Those strategic plans were developed without the investment and commitment of every staff person in the organization. And I've seen where those strategic plans really become beautiful bookshelf items that do not get used except to collect dust. And the organization doesn't refer back to it, the organization doesn't use it, the organization doesn't leverage it to provide direction and guidance. If you're going to move with one voice, which is critical for the success of the organization and critical for the success of your customer, you're going to have a singular organizational strategy. Now, there's going to have to be, in addition to a singular organizational strategy, there's going to have to be an operations strategy. This is the day to day plan that guides all that we do. Some call this an action plan, some call this an operational plan, some call this a programmatic plan. What you call it may depend upon where this plan sits, who leads it, who manages it, etc. But regardless of what you call this plan, there needs to be one singular goal, one singular focus on how we're going to execute on our big picture organizational approach. How do we materialize? How do we manifest? How do we actualize the dreams and the visions we have for ourselves over the next 3 years as an organization? Maybe we have a premier program that we sell and that everybody knows us for, but perhaps in our vision, we want to launch another program. Perhaps we are envisioning another concept that we want to introduce to the market. Maybe we want to go and pivot in a different direction financially. But to do that, we need to lay the groundwork and the foundation operationally with our existing programs. What's the execution towards those goals? Again, all of this ties together with moving with one voice. If you're unable to understand how all this ties together, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to have this pre-approved strategic plan that your board has bought into, that perhaps a few of the senior leaders have bought into from a time and resource process commitment perspective, but nobody is leveraging and utilizing to build the actual tactical steps you all will have to take to reach that goal and then some. This conversation comes down to, don't waste the resources that are available to you. Don't waste the resources that you have worked hard to create and to generate. Don't waste the resources that, quite frankly, aren't promised to any organization, let alone a nonprofit. What resources are we referring to? We're referring to time, money, smarts, people, etc. These are precious resources to any business, let alone to a nonprofit who is trying to find their footing, trying to find their way when it comes to operating on a day-to-day basis. There's enough that's going on that worries a nonprofit leader. And what adds to that plate, what makes it worse, is when there isn't a singular organizational strategy that's guiding the entire organization, and there are no operational strategies to speak of for each department, for each group of people that do the same thing. There's no operational strategy for the programs, for the back office support, etc. I really want to challenge this notion that we just do, we just serve, we just function, and we don't have a plan in place. No, that probably has to stop today. If we're going to move with one voice, we got to stop that today. We got to change our thinking today. Spend more time planning. Spend more time strategizing. Before we go to this third point, I want to pause and encourage you to visit me at DrWilliamPClark.com. If, as you listen to these podcasts, maybe you're new to our channel and you're catching up on all episodes over the years, thank you for doing that. I want to encourage you to listen to all of them. They each are rowing in the same direction when it comes to nonprofit strategy, leadership, and fundraising. But I would encourage you to visit me at DrWilliamPClark.com, where you can find all types of cool resources that can help you along your journey. This includes scheduling a consultation with me. This includes accessing our next set of workshops. We even have our nonprofit fundraising library on our website. If you want one location where you can find all types of cool information that relates to fundraising, strategy, leadership, performance, relationships, when it comes to leading your organization, you're going to want to check out the library. But we have a ton of cool resources. We even have books up there, books I've published, articles I've written that are focused on the topic of leading your nonprofit organization. I want to encourage you to go to our website, DrWilliamPClark.com. Again, it's DrWilliamPClark.com, and check out those resources, grab what you need, and start that journey of reaching those specific goals that you have. Now, moving with one voice, we got one more point here. If we're going to move with one voice strategically, we're going to have to move with one voice in our organizational strategy. We have to move with one voice in our operational strategy. And we got to move with one voice in our fundraising strategy. Yes, our fundraising strategy. We can't leave that out. So we know that we have to raise money. We know that. We know that we have to cobble together resources. We know that's critical. We know that we're going to have to bring together our resources to pay bills, pay our rent, pay our overhead costs, pay our staff, etc. I have seen on way too many occasions that the approach to raising money is not necessarily the same for every person that contributes to the fundraising process. I have seen where you have staff who raise money, but the senior leadership, they believe we should go in a different direction with the fundraising approach. I have seen departments where you have a group of people who collectively raise money, but they all have their splintered ideas. Then you toss in there, don't forget this group, you toss in there the board, who, if you have an active board or a board that's heavily opinionated, they have an idea of how the organization should raise money, what we should do to raise money. These three groups, the core fundraising team, the senior leadership team, and the board, if you all are not rowing in the same direction, your fundraising approach is going to be bifurcated and is going to actually result into you raising no money. So at the end of the day, if you're creating one or more strategies towards raising money, you don't have a strategy. And again, hear me out here. If every group that contributes to the fundraising process is rowing in a different direction, and if there are no singular expectations of everybody to row in the direction of raising money through the form of X, or utilizing this strategy, or you do this strategy, then you do this strategy, and then we'll combine them at the end as a singular approach. If there's no commitment to an approach or approaches that the entire organization believes in, commits themselves to, we're not moving in one voice. We're not moving in one voice. And whether you believe this or not, the lack of having a singular voice will show up in your grant applications. Funders can tell that you're just all over the place. Not having one voice will show up in your funding appeal, your appeal letters to your individual donors. It will show up in your contract proposals. It will show up in your letters of interest. It will show up in all types of places and spaces where you're seeking to raise money. It'll show up in how you approach sponsors who are considering working with your organization and spending dollars with your organization. While you may feel that there is no impact while you may believe that there will be no tangible disruptive change to what's happening to your fundraising, I'm telling you, on the other end, folks who are receiving these requests from you, folks who are making decisions about whether to spend their resources with you, they can feel, they can sense these things because there's no singular voice in what you've sent over. There's too many things. I mean, think about this. You have a grant application and you're serving a particular group in your community. But because there's no commitment to a singular organizational strategy, there's no commitment to an operational strategy, there's no commitment to a fundraising strategy, and I'm talking about a commitment to a strategy that everybody believes in, what you'll get is a paragraph from everybody who is a stakeholder in the organization representing their belief and their system of thought on how to accomplish said goal. And it leads to absolutely no progress being made whatsoever. That can be tough. That can be tough. So, for our mature organizations who are listening to this podcast, the challenge is to think about how can you move with one voice, particularly if you're feeling overwhelmed, overworked, stressed out, if you're feeling like we're not accomplishing the goals that we've set out to accomplish, and we're just limited in what we're able to do, then perhaps we need to be thinking about moving with one voice in these three categories: organizational strategy, operational strategy, fundraising strategy. For the in-between organizations who are still trying to figure out how to grow or if they should grow, maybe this is not an issue you're dealing with yet. But if you're looking to grow, this might be something that might pop up on your radar. And so it's something to think about. How do we move with one voice better? Or how do we begin to introduce that type of thinking in our operations, in our leadership team, amongst our board, etc.? And for the newbies, where this might not be even on your mind, and this may be something that's several years out, it's not too early to begin thinking about moving with one voice, even in the small things. Begin thinking about moving with one voice in the program offerings that you have. Begin thinking about moving with one voice in the ways that you're pursuing your frontline grant applications, etc. Just begin to practice those things so that it doesn't become a heavy lift for you as you grow and as your nonprofit elevates to its next phase of operation. Folks, appreciate you hanging out with me. I'm going to encourage you to visit me at DrWilliamPClark.com. Again, DrWilliamPClark.com. And I want to encourage you to check out any and all of our resources. We do have a new course up there entitled Fundraising Basics for Nonprofits. That particular course was developed just for you. And so I want to encourage you to go ahead and register and take that class and join me as we learn about fundraising and how can we do it effectively for our nonprofits. This is Dr. Clark for this episode